everyone. Welcome back to the Film Fund podcast. I'm your host, founder, and executive producer at the Film Fund, Thomas Verity. I'm also an award-winning filmmaker, producer, and film festival judge. I started the Film Fund to give filmmakers an easier, alternative way to get their films funded. Instead of working on a screenplay, crowdfunding campaign, or grant application, you write one sentence pitching your film for a chance to receive up to $10,000 and other prizes to make it. By the time you're listening to this podcast episode, our winter narrative and documentary funding contests have closed. So, yeah, we had a great funding round. Very excited to review the pitches in the judging period, but you may be listening to this in the future at a later date. So, wherever you are out there, check us out at thefilmfund.co. Sign up for our newsletter to find out about our funding opportunities for a chance to win up to 10 grand to make your film and other prizes. These contests happen regularly, so if you're listening at a later date, check that all out for the most up-to-date information. Today we have Jeff Berg and Gregory Sterner, part of White Horse Media Group. They were winners of one of our sponsored prizes from Expressway Cinema Rentals, a 2-day rental package of an, Blackmagic Ursa Mini G2 and an RE Prime lens set. Guys, thank you so much for coming. Excited to talk about film and whatever we're going to talk about today, your projects. And yeah, so thanks. Could you give
Thanks for
give
having us.
yourselves an intro much better than I can?
Hey, great to be here, Tom. Thanks for having us.
For sure.
Yeah, we're certainly excited to be here, and certainly thank you for what you do, giving nobodies like us a chance to make the things that have been burning in our minds for so long.
Nobody's a nobody.
We certainly appreciate that. That's right, nobody's a nobody. But just a quick bio of me, if you want to know. I decided to go back to film school at like 38 years old. So it's always been a passion of mine. I went to the Art Institute of Philadelphia out of high school,
cool.
But never finished. I had my son very early in life, and things were very different by that. But
Yeah.
back then, it was you had to move to either New York or LA
Mhm.
to make it in that business, and I didn't want to be a news cameraman my entire life. So I got into the corporate world and just got kind of stuck there, and was never really truly happy. And said, you know what? One of the benefits of having a son very young is I get to do what I want now because he's old enough to
Yeah,
do
there you
his
go.
own thing. And decided that I was going to just take my shot and go back to the thing that I truly
Well,
love.
That's
and
awesome.
I
You
was
said you went to Philadelphia? You said you went to Art
What's that?
Institute of Philadelphia?
I did originally, yeah, and then my latest venture, I went to
Okay,
Full Sail.
cool. Just
in Florida.
interjecting because I'm currently in Philadelphia. That's where I'm from. So I was just curious.
Oh yeah, well that's where we're based out of, essentially, right outside Philadelphia, like the
Okay.
Reading area.
Gotcha.
If you're familiar
Very cool.
with that? Yeah, not far.
I know that I can say I have a similar story as Jeff, but I never stopped having the kids. So I still have like 2-year-old and 7-year-old that
Oh,
I
man.
have to wrangle while doing this kind of stuff. But actually, Tom, it's funny because Jeff and I were in a similar situation. We both kind of tried a lot of things earlier in life, but nothing quite struck. And when I got a
Mhm.
call from Jeff that he was working on a project, and he said, "I think I need a writer for it," I just knew that there's something about Jeff that I've always noticed since being associated with him, where he was able to mobilize people. And I think for filmmakers, you have to have that figure on a project that is able to get everybody mobilized. And for whatever reason, Jeff has an intangible talent where people do follow him around his projects that he's excited about, and they take ownership
Mhm.
over them as though they are their projects. And when he called me and said, I think we need a writer for this, it was for a podcast project. I kind of
Okay.
knew that things were different. Things were going to be different than they had been before. And ever since I got hooked up with Jeff, I feel like we've been on a track that I've never felt like I've quite been on before. Like we're actually going somewhere. I've tried bands before. I've tried to write. I've written 2 books. I got 1 published. I've had some level of success. But ever since me and Jeff got hooked up with White Horse, I feel like we're on a different track than we've ever been before. And when Film Fund, when we had the honor of winning the Film Fund contest and getting access to that professional level equipment that, I mean, let's face it, Jeff, we wouldn't have been able to ever afford that equipment and make a film that looked as good as Girl on the Farm is going to look. Had it not been for the Film Fund contest. And when that happened, I felt like truly it was our first break. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, well, not, I wouldn't say we would never be able to afford
Not
it,
this year.
but it wouldn't have been. It wouldn't have happened this year or last
Whoa,
year.
the
Yeah,
film
that's for
fund
sure.
making dreams come true. That might be our new tagline. How long have you
Heck
guys
yeah.
been working together?
It's been about 2 years.
Oh
Okay.
my gosh. Yeah, yeah. The podcast that he's talking about got started about 3 years ago, or maybe like 2.5 years ago, and he came on in the second iteration
What's the
of
podcast
that
about?
project. So yeah, a little over 2 years, I think. It's called the Ever Evolving Truth. You might have actually heard about it, being where you're from. We the first season we did kind of just fell into our laps, but we exposed a woman in Chester
Oh my God.
County faking cancer using Facebook, and
I do remember
Jessica
that.
Cornell
Yeah.
or JVC is. Yeah, yeah. So it ended up going like national, actually worldwide. But we
Very
got on Good
cool.
Morning America and that kind of thing. Briefly, yeah, it was
Yeah.
talk about 15 seconds of fame, not even 15 minutes, but it was exciting for sure, and it kind of just leapfrogged us into this. I mean, if it did anything,
Mhm.
it made us some contacts. It got us together. It reignited a passion to create um, and share with the world, and uh, so there's a
Mhm.
lot of positives that came from that, obviously. But it was a
That's
lot of
awesome.
fun.
Where do you
Well, and
guys?
now it gives us the opportunity every week, Tom. Since after the JVC story happened and kind of exploded, obviously you can't do 10 years of a hot story once
Sure.
the story is not a story anymore. So we kind of have shifted gears, and now the ever evolving truths is about the biggest issues facing the country right now. It's become very political, but it's not the kind of political thing where we're trying to convert people. We've got voices on both sides that get on there now and talk about the most polarizing issues facing the country now. And it's a show that I think we're more proud of than we were even the first season that it kind of exploded the way it did. I think we're more proud of the format. It's more us than it's ever been. And everything we do going forward, we're hoping that, you know, it, to be authentically yourselves and creating, and to be able to, honestly follow that and head towards success, that's our goal.
Mhm.
And I feel like we, as I said earlier, we're closer and closer to that as time goes on. Things are becoming more um, defined by our own
Mhm.
identities. Than when you first get a break at anything, it's kind of out of your control. And I think we've done a good job over the last 2 years trying to make it more about our own identities, expressing ourselves, and the people around us now are all in moving in the same direction, which is something I've never experienced before. So it's really exciting, actually.
Is that where the inspiration for your work generally comes from? That kind of innate identity of yourself?
Wanting to express that, yeah, I think so. And ever since I can remember, I've always wanted to put something out there. I've always wanted to make a mark on the world. I've thought a lot about human beings and life and what this all means. And to express that in art is about the highest calling to me, outside of raising kids and doing the real human stuff of life. That to me is the highest calling possible, is to be able to express what you actually feel about the world, and what you can offer. What new ideas can you offer the world, to be a value added human
Mhm.
being. And to do that through art, I don't know about you, Jeff, but I think that's, to me, that's my highest calling.
Yeah, well, Greg and I have had this discussion many times, and Tom, I'm sure you're, as a creative person, you felt similar. But when you're forced to make a living doing something that you're not passionate about, you lay awake at night with these ideas that just need to come out, and you need to express them in some form or another. And the podcast was kind of a way to do that in the beginning, but it just led
Mhm.
to wanting to do bigger things and do it for actually make a living doing it at some point. And that's certainly what we're striving for. And Greg has one of the reasons I love working with Greg. Greg,
Oh, cool.
has a philosophy degree. Your
Right.
master's, right? Master's in philosophy. So he's way smarter than I am, and he can put into words kind of the things I'm thinking, which is why we make a good team. But aside from being way smarter than me, we're we're on the same level as far as what we think of art and how important it is in all forms, not just film, but in all forms, and how important it is to not suppress that, to in fact lift it up. We've discussed how, as kids, if we had outlets like the internet to connect with other
Mhm.
creative people, our lives would have taken a
I
very
think
different
so.
trajectory. And I think it's one of the reasons why the film fund is so
Right.
important.
Yeah.
Without the internet, I would have never found it. So it's like this is such a great way to give artists out there a voice that don't have access
Yeah.
to a studio or funding
That's
or
where the idea came from.
rich friends or family.
I had a short script called Son of Blackbeard, which I've talked about on the podcast a little bit, and it got into Holly Short's film festival screenwriting contest. And I went out. I was so excited. I went out there. Um, the flight was so expensive, but I was like, oh my god, this is it. Like, this is my dream. So I just did it. And I saw these
Right.
amazing films, short films. It was Holly Shorts. And I went up to one of the filmmakers, and I noticed like a lot of the films were from USC or AFI. They had the little, title cards at the end, from the school. And I went up to this one filmmaker because I just really liked his film.
Yeah.
Um, and I was curious because I was all about trying to get funding for Son of Blackbeard at that time. And I was like, hey, so I was in college. I think it was like a sophomore, so 2019 or 20 or 21 or something like that. Um, and when I went up to him, I was like, hey, so I loved your film. I'm just curious, like, how did you get the funding for it? He goes, oh, it was a branded film from an ice cream company. I was like, oh, that's interesting. So now I'm working on FF branded, trying to get that off the ground. But the other question was like, well, besides that, where do all these films get their funding from? I mean, they were all really, really high production value. And I knew almost nothing about the industry at that time. And he goes, oh, well, you know, and I assumed the schools gave them funding because they were school projects. And he goes, no, most of them are just rich kids and their parents give them funding. I was like, oh my god, that's tough. And I was, yeah, I was
What a
like, oh,
depressing
the guy
thought.
was so candid with me, because I think he had gone to one of those
Yeah.
schools probably, but and it seemed like it was either you are a very generous family and friends. I don't think there's anything necessarily wrong with that. Everyone has a different situation, but to a lot of people, they don't have access to that. Or it's crowdfunding, which is a huge commitment, full time job. Got to start it 6 months in advance. Really networking to be successful
Right.
there. Or it's the crapshoot
Hmm.
with screenwriting contests and grants and that whole process. So it was that trip and that conversation, just you bringing up like rich kids, kind of made me think of that. It's tough, yeah. So we wanted to offer a simpler approach to it. It's still a contest. There's no getting around that, but we made it a bit simpler, a little bit more straightforward, I think, and I'm glad you guys find it useful.
How does it feel for you? If I could just
Well,
ask
it
real
Yeah,
quick,
go for
sorry,
it.
I'm a very curious guy, the philosopher mind. How does it feel for you to know that you've actually provided the break, the first break to a lot of aspiring filmmakers, and made it possible for them to make a film that looked like it belonged up on screen? I can't imagine how satisfying that is. Is it as satisfying as you
It
would
really is.
imagine
I
it
mean,
is as an outsider?
I'm very critical of myself. I'm hard on myself in a lot of ways, and I'll get kind of bogged down sometimes in doing all the marketing for the film fund. And we're a small team. I mean, I have some, you know, uh, independent contractors who work with me, freelancers, but it's a very small organization right now. I'm the guy doing
Mhm.
pretty much everything. Um, so like I'll get bogged down sometimes, like, oh man, I'm doing this digital marketing, researching keywords for the blog, trying to get this out. I'm like, what the fuck am I doing? This isn't film. And then I get an email from like somebody like you guys, like, hey, we finished our film, here it is. And it's just so exciting. It's like I'll just put everything aside and I'll watch or a rough cut or whatever they sent. Like here's a little teaser what we've been working on. It's just so satisfying. And it's like, wow, okay, like I produced this. Like I funded this. I
That's
I
so
helped
awesome.
make this happen, and these people are so excited. And it's a great
Mhm.
feeling. It's like opening those emails is, and even being on the contest, like or, podcast, excuse me, connecting with people. It's just so rewarding. And I've been in that cubicle before. I worked in an agency for about a year and a half. Hired me as a video producer, but I ended up doing more digital marketing stuff. And I was in the literal gray like cubicle where you couldn't see over it, and I was just like, I watched Office Space almost every weekend just to kind of like relate to that. And
Like,
I would dream of
looking for the
throwing that
copier to
cubicle wall
just
over like
to
he does in
yeah.
the movie. So it's rewarding for sure. And I just need to focus a little bit more on remembering why I'm doing this. It's to help fund films. It's a little ironic, like when I do look for funding for my own projects, like, oh man, I run a film funding company and now I got to try to figure out how to fund my own project. I obviously can't enter the film
Right.
fund. But yeah, no. To answer your question, it's a great feeling. I need to focus on it a little bit more. But when I do see those emails and those rough cuts and finished products being sent in, it's just an awesome feeling.
Well, time is our biggest hurdle to jump over. I know that's the one thing that dogs us
Mhm.
is just like mentally, emotionally, spiritually. You have the exact trajectory that you want to go in, but Jesus Christ, there's
No,
no time. There's never
it's
enough
tough.
time.
Yeah, when I was working
It's
at the agency job out of college, I was getting up at 5 in the morning to work on the Film Fund blog, and then I was going to work after, and I was just like, I wish I had more time. And then I ended up quitting and gave myself more time. But yeah, time is definitely a valuable
I
resource.
feel like I feel like we really needed Jeff. I'm curious if you agree, but I feel like we really needed a shot in the arm when that film fund gift, I considered a gift, the contest, placing in the contest. When we got that gift, I felt like at that time you and me really needed a shot of motivation because we were running the whole thing on fantasy and belief and that kind of thing, kind of like the Peter Pan vibe. And I think when that happened, it was like a real life. It was just a real life sort of affirmation that we were headed in the right track. And here's okay, we're gonna extend you guys a hand, at least one hand and a pull forward, and that's what you did for us, Tom. There would be no film Girl on the Farm right now if it weren't for the film fund, or at least if there was, it
Mhm.
wouldn't look the way it does.
I love
Uh,
that.
but yeah, Jeff, I feel like we needed that, didn't we?
I well, I remember the conversation because at that time
Okay.
we didn't even have a finished script. It was just an outline at that point. It was still really just an idea. And when we got the email that said that, hey, we have a camera package for you, I was like, wow, somebody that works in film who has the authority to judge this idea thought it was a good idea. And
Mhm.
that gave us enough to be like, let's finish the script, let's get to work on it.
Yeah.
Someone else thinks it's a good idea. It's not just us tooting our own horns thinking it's a good idea. So yeah, it was definitely a much needed. And even going forward, no matter how many contests we lose or don't get in, film festivals we don't get into,
Mhm.
we'll always be able to look back on that moment and say, well, somebody else thought it was a good
Yeah.
idea. So there's
It
a
sucks that
chance
you
that
need
somebody
that
else will
external
think
validation,
another
but at the
idea we
same
have in the
time, like,
future is
it
a
is
good
an
idea.
industry, and you are, as much as we want to create work for ourselves, film at the end of the day, it is a product and it needs to resonate with other people. So when you do get that validation, that
Hmm.
kind of stamp of approval from other people, it's
Right.
kind of like, oh my god, this is legit. I can actually do this. And then that's what happened to me with Holly Shorts. I went out there and I checked in and I signed in, and I'd never gone to a film festival before. And they gave me a badge and it said filmmaker on it. And I was like, oh my god, I guess I'm a filmmaker. Like, here we go. This is it. It gave me that spark of inspiration.
It's
Right.
So I totally
official.
get where you're coming
Yeah.
from there. That's awesome. It was an awesome feeling.
That's interesting because I had a project I had to do, like a self
Was this
evaluation
at
of
Full
where I am
Sail?
as a filmmaker. I think probably every film school makes you do it. And yeah, yeah. And I at the end I said, well, the hardest thing I had, the hardest hurdle I had to overcome was believing that I was a filmmaker. But the fact
Mhm.
of the matter is, I at that point I'd made a couple films. They were goofy and silly, and they kind of it's like a staircase. Like the first one we did, it was just
Mhm.
off the top of our head. We did it on our cell phones. We thought of a funny idea. We did it, and then the next one we prepped a little bit, and then the third one, my buddy bought a camera
Mhm.
because we inspired him to get back into. Now he's doing weddings and stuff like that, but he works on our projects with us as
Mhm.
DP or even cameraman here and there. He's really on the tech side of it, so he's a good person to have on our team. So he bought
Okay.
a nice camera. He bought the Canon Mark III, I think, which is a cinema camera. Real, gave us the nicest image we've ever seen. And
Was
then we
that the
started doing,
C300?
yeah, the C300, yeah. So we started using that, and then we finally got to a point where we wrote a full script, and then it goes up and up and up, the production value and
Yeah.
everything like that. But at that point, I had done all that, and I still wasn't calling myself a filmmaker. And like, what's the definition of
Mhm.
a filmmaker? You make films. Doesn't
Yeah.
matter that no one sees them or likes them or laughs at them.
Right.
You made it. So
Yeah,
if
exactly.
you can
Kevin
call
Smith's
yourself
a
a
big proponent
filmmaker,
of that.
right?
Mhm.
It's
Yeah,
a
it's
big
like
hurdle.
I go back and forth because that external validation does feel great.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, if you write that screenplay, you wrote a screenplay, you're a screenwriter.
Right.
You pick up a camera, you directed a film, you're a director. Um, and so there was this tweet by Kevin Smith that I saw like years ago. I may have even still been like in high school, and it was just something along the lines of like drop the word aspiring from you being a filmmaker. You're not an aspiring filmmaker. If you've picked up a camera and made a film, you're a filmmaker.
Yeah.
It's like stop kind of maybe I don't think degrading is the right word, but it's like
Not giving yourself the
demoting
credit you
yourself.
deserve.
Yeah, not giving yourself the credit. Like you're a filmmaker, you did it. Now you're just kind of in my interpretation of that. Now you're just iterating and improving, and growing as an artist.
Yeah.
Everyone has to start somewhere.
Perfecting your craft, which is
Mhm.
something that should never stop. If you stop trying to perfect what you love to do, you don't love it anymore.
Well, and I think
Exactly.
you need to always be cognizant of the joy that you're getting out of it while doing it. That's the part that if there's any advice I could give anybody, I had an album that nobody heard, I had a book that very few people got to read, but it's like I made it, and I wrote that book, and it got published. It was
Mhm.
like I got that validation, but if you're thinking that like on the other side of the rainbow is going to be your happy life, that isn't always how it goes. The journey is really the thing, and like the idea of
Mhm.
writing those songs and recording that album, the idea of spending 5 years getting the entirety of that book down on the page and having that published, and now the process of recording almost 200 podcast episodes and going out and over 3 days working 17-hour days, 16 17-hour days, making Girl on the Farm over a weekend. It's like I remember
That's
one
great.
thing, Tom, that I don't think I'll ever forget is laying in the fields out in like 98-degree sunshine. It was miserable.
Dying.
But I will say this: I'm being eaten alive by insects and I've got blood makeup all over me. I looked up at the sky and I just got this weird trick of the light and I saw kind of like a sparkly deal going, and I said to myself, "I'm living."
That
I
was
was
you
having
having
heat
heat
stroke.
stroke,
I
Greg.
was about to die. It was a bad situation.
You ate some weird mushrooms in the field that
Yeah,
you found.
Right,
it was an assisted vision, but I remember saying to myself, "You're living a better life than anybody you know right now because you're actually sitting here over a weekend in your spare time when you're not working your 9 to 5 and you're making a film that you wrote with your partner that you
Mhm.
guys are seeing through to fruition." And I noticed at that point, like, I'm living the best life I can. So for anybody who's doing this, as hard as it is not to beat yourself up and as hard as it is not to lose that faith, just remember, just in the act of trying and the act of doing, you're living a better life than most people out there who are just going along for the ride.
Yeah, it's all about satisfaction and loving
Yeah.
what you do. I'm a big believer in that. And just you said you were in blood makeup in the field, so were you in the
I
film
was
too?
I play a hideous
Oh, that's
rabies
awesome.
infected creature that hopefully is about to he in his mind he wants to terrorize Jeff's character and Nina's character on this farm. Our young actress Nina Kazari, who was absolutely fantastic in her first effort. But yes, my intentions are not good in that film, Tom, and I'm up to start trouble. So hopefully they end up stopping me.
I love it. Tell us a little bit
Well,
about the
that's
film. Oh, Jeff, sorry I cut you off. You go ahead. I'm a bad host.
well.
I jump in all
Real
the
quick,
time.
do you mind before we get into the film, Tom? We always give Greg some shit about him not being tech savvy. He's the
Okay.
elder statesman of the group. He's only a couple years older than most of us. At first I thought this was just an effect on your side, but whatever's going on with his
Oh,
camera
I know.
right
It looks
now,
like
doesn't it look like he's talking to us from a 1990s
yeah.
VHS tape?
Or
I mean, it's like,
what's that movie?
are you seeing that, Greg?
Paranormal Activity.
No, it
Yeah.
looks totally
Yes.
And I
normal to
think
me. I don't know what I'm projecting out to you guys. It looks normal from here.
it should be normal in the
I'm go-
final when we release this because the platform we use, your video is recorded locally on your computer and then it's uploaded, so it should be fine. That's probably just the broadcast feed
like
because
a
of the
connection.
Wi-Fi connection. But
I
yeah, no,
have to
you
take a
look.
Oh
picture of
God,
it.
now I can't wait to see it.
You look.
It's like
It's like gray
you're
and
coming
green.
to us from the multiverse.
Yeah, it's great. It's a little funky
Well,
looking.
hopefully it's a good effect. If when something gets spectacularly screwed up, I hope it at least looks cool.
It definitely adds character. We've had a few tech issues on the Film Fun podcast. Like when I first started doing it a year or so ago, there was this one guest who just didn't have the right text set up, and there was so much feedback, and I just made it part of the episode, and I just mixed it in. I was like, all right, we're just gonna go with this. You could actually hear
I
me
think I
say
listened
like,
to that one.
oh damn it, like during the recording, and I just let it go and had some fun with it.
It's such a learning curve, and especially on the guest part, like we've run into this. We've made it a policy now that we won't have you on unless you can have a headset, a
Mhm.
basic headset or earbuds or
Yeah.
something in a quiet place. We did this episode on
Oh,
religion, and we had these these very uh, fanatic Christians. Not to get into religion,
Sure.
right? But they were, I mean, they were over the
Uh-huh.
top, and it was just like her kids were crying in the background the entire time, and it's like, what did you
Yeah.
expect when you came on here? Like, we need an hour of your time of just. Is there? If there was no one to watch your kids, I get it. Just say no.
Right.
Like that's a much more respectful thing
Were
to
they in a
do. So
different
yeah,
room at least, or were
totally
they
feel
like
your pain.
right there with her?
Oh no, she was carrying him
Oh
around.
my god,
yeah. They
that's
had her
tough.
Yeah.
microphone in their mouths, I think, at one point.
Wonderful.
So,
Yeah.
Jeff, you want to talk about Girl on the Farm? Kind of the beginnings?
Yeah, well, I think it. I think everybody who's proud of something or produces something that they're proud of is going to say it's an interesting story. But this film literally started. The idea came from a picture. Again, it was an assignment. I felt like it was just one of these like filler assignments that instructors give you because if they don't give you something to do, they're not doing their job. But that being said, I thought it was an enjoyable one at least, and it was just he gave us two pictures, and he said pick one of these pictures and write a story
Hmm.
about it. And the picture was a girl sitting on a suitcase with her dog next to her, just looking out this long dirt road with what looked like fields on either side of her, which I can only assume it was a
Mhm.
farm. And the idea just popped in my head, like especially with what we were going through at the time. This was right in the heart of the pandemic where everything was closing down. My campus was closed. I was going to film school in my apartment at home. Like, what
Yeah.
a waste of money if you did that without the
Uh-huh.
context of the pandemic. And I thought to myself, like, if we ever did have to go through something that would have a huge effect on the population of the world, people would probably try to isolate themselves or go into hiding. And if a family isolated themselves, parents, kids, and the parents ended up dying off or something happened, the kids would be left there at a young age. What choice would they have? Would they stay in isolation by themselves, or in this case, by herself, all alone? Is that worse than going out into a world where people are dying of a
Mhm.
horrible disease and trying to find other people to go through that with, or would they choose to stay home? And I just think that's such a
Yeah.
horrible choice. It's like you talk about having two terrible options and having to make the one that's not as
Mhm.
bad as the other. Uh, one you die, one there's a good potential of you dying or
Mhm.
something worse. You know, in a world like that, a post-apocalyptic world, if you will, or staying at home and never being able
Yeah.
to interact with another human being again. That's just as bad as dying for a lot of people. So uh, I just thought it would be interesting to explore that idea. And then we didn't. We obviously didn't want to do anything like we didn't want to do the flu or
Mhm.
the coronavirus or anything like that. The
Right.
coronavirus is too easy. The flu is, you know, every expert, every virologist out there says what will kill us is the
Right.
flu, a version of the flu if we're not careful. So again, to me, that was too easy. We wanted to take something that was really scary um, and make it scarier by what if this what if this turned into something? What if this mutated into something worse than it already is? And I thought, you know,
Hmm.
rabies. It's a virus. It could mutate. Um, and if you look into, like, obviously there's a vaccination for rabies, but if you don't get vaccinated and you get rabies, it's like
Wow.
100% death rate,
I did
and the
not know
death
that.
is horrible. It's one of the worst things you can experience. So we obviously we overdid it and on purpose to
Mhm.
make
I
that as
can't think of
scary as
anything worse than
possible.
airborne
Uh,
rabies.
Yeah, that does not sound good.
right. And we thought that's the perfect reason for a, a, a couple of parents to take their daughter to a farm away from everybody else and try to live there secluded and
Mhm.
just stay away from it all. And that's kind of how the idea was born there. And once we had that idea, we had the log line, which is what we used to for the contest. And then, we had this outline of how we wanted it to look and feel. And then we weren't expecting to win, and then we won. And I'm like, oh shit, we have to
Yeah,
write a
that's
script.
one of the things I love about the Film Fund. You don't need a script yet. It's I like to
Yeah,
say it's akin to the MVP um, idea in kind of product development and minimum viable product. You just create something that's very simple, very basic, that kind of tests your assumptions, and the assumptions being, is this, and with the Film Fund, is this idea, I hate to use the word good, but is it solid enough to develop a story around? Oh, okay. We didn't, and if it doesn't,
right.
rank or anything, then maybe not. But it did. It's like, okay, now we're going to invest some resources
Hmm.
in actually developing this idea and writing the script. So yeah, that's all. That's awesome. I've had some people enter who I email them back that they won. They're like, oh my god, that's awesome. What was the idea again? Because I submitted 4 of them. So it's funny. Yeah, that's
Which one
great.
was it? Yeah.
Can I read your entry sentence? Usually we don't release them until the film's published, and I'll leave that up to you guys.
Oh, for sure.
Okay, because yeah, I pulled it
Oh,
up a minute ago.
absolutely. Yeah,
So
yeah.
here it is. A dying father demands a promise from his teenage daughter to live a life of isolation and remote safety during a deadly pandemic. We will use the funds for equipment rental, and they received the sponsored equipment rental from Expressway Cinema Rentals. So it's just a great pitch. You have a lot. Obviously, it's topical. You have the deadly pandemic. You have the conflict with the dying father demanding, his daughter to stay there. So it's definitely. I'm excited to see it. And you guys had blood makeup. So is this a horror film?
Partially.
I wouldn't call it a horror film. Yeah, there's some horror elements to it. There's definitely we try to set up
Okay.
some jump scares here and there. I would call it. I think I would describe
Okay.
it more as a thriller. Our main character, who we named Brianna, but is played by Nina. That's the other thing too. Every single one of my instructors, every single person I've talked to, and you probably told people this too. Don't try to avoid working
Yeah.
with children and animals in your films. We did
First
both.
time out.
In the first real one we tried to do, uh, and but Nina was absolutely fantastic. I couldn't be happier with, and we tried to limit the dialogue for both of us because that's one thing. That's one of the challenges you have as a filmmaker. It's like you have
Mhm.
a finite amount of money as an independent filmmaker, and in our case, it's essentially $0. Right? I cashed out an insurance policy to be able to feed the people that
Wow.
were kind enough to work on this project and um, rent a Airbnb so
Mhm.
we didn't have to drive an hour to and from the location. So we couldn't afford actors
Mhm.
is the point that I'm trying to get at. So it's like, do you ask one of your friends to play the part, or do you trust the
Right.
person that helped write the character to do it? So I'm not an actor. I've never had a desire to be an actor, but I was like, I made the greatest sacrifice of my life by playing
I love it.
the part of the father in this movie, and I didn't want to expose myself too much
Mhm.
uh, with a heavy dialogue because that's the hardest thing to do. And we didn't want to put that pressure on Nina either. And uh, what the result was, we got this beautiful uh, reactions from her. She has the most expressive face that
Yeah.
I could have hoped for, and it's just you can really feel her pain
Mhm.
in the movie of having to make these
So
tough
do you play the
choices
dying father?
as an 11-year
Okay.
old. And yeah, I do. Yeah, yeah. Um,
Mhm.
but again, I'm not an actor. I
Sure.
never wanted
I'm
to
the
be an
same way. I've
actor.
put
I never
myself in
trained to be an
projects. Yeah,
actor.
it's like
I just
with
believed in the
my most recent
character.
project, the Toms.
Yeah,
There are these 2 stand-up comedians named the Toms, and they have very little dialogue. They're just basically making jokes about the name Tom. It's a whole thing. But I was like, we needed to save money, so my co-producer is also named Tom. That's kind of where the idea came from. So it was like, we're just going to be the
yeah,
Toms. Like,
that's great.
neither of us are actors. But there's like, it's a very quick clips, like your cameo, fine. And then my previous film, Son of Blackbeard, the guy who was supposed to play this one like party goer son of Blackbeard's throwing a party at his dad's house, and the actor like didn't show up. My friend of mine, or I changed the schedule on him and he couldn't make it or something. So I was like, all right, I guess I'm doing this myself. So definitely been there. And like going
Yeah.
back to what we were talking about
Well, I
before,
feel like
does that make us actors now because we've acted? I guess by definition,
one of the best things I ever heard.
Doesn't
Yeah,
necessarily say we're
yeah.
good actors.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's this
we just
director
are.
that I love, Werner Herzog. He did, probably the people know Grizzly Man and Cave of Forgotten Dreams, or would be like his biggest American hits. Anyway, he said he doesn't believe in the concept of actors.
Really?
He just said there are roles, and there are,
Sure.
I'm paraphrasing, but there are roles, and there are people that are right for those roles. And I think that's true, actually. I think sometimes, whether you're an actor or not, whether you have any dramatic ability at all, if the role, if you can connect to something real in the role, then you're right for the role. And I feel like that is true. And if nothing else about Girl on the Farm, I can say that Nina was perfect for the role of Brianna. She has a strength that emanates from her on screen. It's really strange, but it's true. And we were so lucky to get that, because when we first went into it, we had no idea if she was going to be good or not. And she just has such a presence. So I felt lucky. And one thing I really wanted to show you real quick, Tom, as it sits right next to me, Jeff described that picture that he saw in class that was the inspiration. My wife, Abby, who does the podcast with us, does a great job, is a big part of Whitehorse. She made this for me for Christmas, but this is actually the poster for Girl on the Farm. And you can see
the feet. I'm gonna be honest with you. It looks like it's the gray blob.
The VHS, the 90s VHS.
If
I hope this gray blob has been very inspirational to all of you. But if the camera fixes itself in the end, you will see that it was the picture Jeff talked about, only brought to life.
That's
which
so
is
cool.
a
Sorry to
big
make a
point
joke
of pride.
about it, but if
no, it's hilarious. Of course, the camera.
If for some reason the final feed is still the gray blob when we go to release this, please email me that photo, or like a picture of that photo, and because we'll do a blog post about it or something. We'll get it out there as part of the story. And I just want to see it too, personally.
Perfect. Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, yeah. That picture is like burned in my mind, because it sparked the idea, and I always imagined doing the movie poster and recreating that picture with Nina.
Okay.
And the dog we used was my dog Allison, who was also better than expected, but she. There was this moment in the film where she's supposed to attack the Greg's character, who's riddled with rabies, and she jumped up on him and started licking his face and wagging her tail.
That's so funny.
Not her best acting moment.
Right. But yeah, overall she did way better than expected.
Or Nina or both.
Which was good. Both.
Yeah.
But the dog was that was my biggest concern going in, because she's a typical pit bull mix. She's just happy and loves people and wants to do it. But the good thing is, like, if we had to get her to run, we would just put a group of people behind the camera, and we would all call her, and she would just
I can't wait to see
come
this.
hopping through the field. So excited.
Yeah.
So we were able to kind of trick her into doing some of the things that we needed her to do. And then we one of the great things about being an independent filmmaker is the abilities we have that we didn't have, in the late 90s, 2000s, which something like After Effects allows us to composite out certain things. So we were able to get her to do some things with on a leash.
Gotcha. Very cool.
And control her a little bit.
Did you learn those
and composite out
After
the
Effects
leash
skills at Full Sail, or is that
which
kind
is
of something
amazing.
you picked up along the way?
It's something I kind of picked up. I started messing with earlier versions of After Effects when I first started.
Okay.
I graduated in high school in 2000, so went to Art Institute right there. After Effects was there. It wasn't as powerful as it is now, but I messed around with some earlier versions. And the great thing about Adobe is that everything kind of still looks the same, even though it does a lot more. So I was able to kind of pick up. And
for sure.
YouTube is a wonderful
at the YouTube University a lot.
University as well.
Sure is.
Yeah. So I've learned invaluable things at film school. There's no doubt about it. But you can learn a lot of the technical aspects.
Yeah.
of
Oh,
of
100%. And besides
filmmaking
YouTube, I mean, there's
from
so many great
from
resources out
YouTube,
there. If you
especially
go
on the
to, just kind of
editing
plug the
side of
site
it.
for a second, if you go to thefilmfund.co/learn, we have an entire repository of resources and educational
Mm-hmm.
content. We actually have a post on there for post-production. It's like, I forget the number, but, like 9 amazing, free post-production resources for independent filmmakers. There's just so much out there. I mean, there are LUTs, there are tutorials. There's just, and even the paid ones aren't that expensive. You get something like,
Yep.
is it called, I think it's LinkedIn Learning now. It used to be called Linda. Like, that's a great resource. It can be a little dry sometimes, but there's just so much out there. But I mean, film schools,
Mm-hmm.
I contemplated going to film school for a long time. I almost transferred in undergrad to film school. I was an English major. Decided to go, I'll do it for grad school. Then I got busy with the film fund and an entrepreneurship grad program, and I never did it. But the question was in my mind, like, should I go to film school? Should I not go to film school? That was always kind of a big decision for me that I kept putting off, and I finally decided not to, just because at this point, I mean, I'm still very early in my career, but I think the things I would value the most in film school is really the network
Mm-hmm.
and the community of people. That's why I love the film fund community so much. Like, I'm getting that
Yes.
opportunity to talk to people about film and filmmaking right now on this podcast. So that's kind of like, I mean, the biggest reason I'm also not going to film school is because it's fucking expensive. So like that's a big part of it too. But just connecting with
Yeah,
people is so important
tell
in
me
the
about
industry.
It is. Yeah.
And but we're going on a tangent. But yeah, go check out the filmfund.co/learn. Go check out YouTube. So many good things, and I'm a big believer in teaching yourself technical stuff when you can.
And I've checked out some of your resources as well. So yeah,
Oh,
it's
awesome.
definitely. And then that's the thing too. Like the great thing about the world we live in is that we have as much information as we want and we can handle in our own brains, but it's so overwhelming. Where do I start? So being able to have a community like yours that kind of
Hmm.
curates, if anything, just a place to get started, a place to kind of get you in the right direction, depending on what you want to learn, is a great thing. And you're right, the networking aspect
Hmm.
of film school is important. If you can find
Yeah,
that somewhere
and
else and save yourself $100,000,
mhm,
that's good too. I also found like no one's going to be able
yeah,
to make you any more creative than the way you were born. But when you're able to learn from people that have
mhm,
had success in the industry, which is a part of film school, what they can do is help you bring that creativity to life, help you refine, yeah, refine your
yeah,
storytelling
and they can help
ability,
you
which has
remember
been
it.
huge for me, and also just learning what this light does. Right, this. I mean, again, you can find that on YouTube, but there
Mhm,
the benefit is actually getting there to hold it, place it. By putting it here, you're creating this type of
yeah,
visual. This is what you're portraying to your audience. If you move it 3 inches this way, this is what it's going to do. Being able, like hands, if you're a hands-on learner, I think that's really important, and that's the way I am. I
mhm,
have to fail a million times before I learn the right way to do it.
yeah. That's a really good point too. I mean, you could read blog post
Mm-hmm.
after blog post and video after video. If you're not actually, you need to get on set too. Like I want to stress that. If you're just kind of, and set doesn't have to be this huge, big budget professional
Mm-hmm.
set. Set could be your apartment or your parents' bedroom or living room or whatever. But like you need to be with other people in a professional environment and really like, okay, I
Yeah,
read these blog posts.
and
Now let me
and
try to apply them
and
in a real
I
world setting.
totally. Uh, I
That's
totally
important.
second that sentiment. I'm sure Greg would too. One of the best parts about the film that we just did is, and this really comes off of Mark Duplas's speech from South by Southwest a few years ago, where he talks about, look, there's two ways you can go. You can go work in a studio, you can be a PA, you can work your way up. It takes 40 years, whatever, or you could just go out there with your friends and make a film, and maybe you have a good idea, enter it in film festivals, and maybe someone likes it, right? And then all of a sudden now you're the person hiring those people that are
Hmm.
trying to work their way up. So like the crew that was on this, aside from
Hmm.
myself and um, our DP Rick Greer, who has worked with us on certain projects as a camera person, as a DP. Uh, Nobody else there has ever been on a movie set before. So this was like, not only did we shoot it over 3 days, 16 hours a
Hmm.
day, this was a crash course in filmmaking for all of us essentially. But it
Yeah.
and And we had someone.
That's amazing.
It
I
really
love that.
was.
Right, we
To
had
another
someone.
level of reality.
Her name is Amanda Wagenseller, who did the
Mhm.
makeup for us, like complicated uh, makeup, movie makeup that she again learned from watching YouTube videos and just practicing. And
Mhm.
she did an amazing job. But
Yeah.
that was her first experience. Yeah, very good.
Legit
We had
scary.
people holding boom mics that had never didn't even know microphones existed, or, you know.
Yep.
There you go. Yeah,
I had my dad hold the boom in the first couple of films I ever did in like my
yeah.
backyard. No idea what
Hey,
he was
Dad,
doing.
God bless him. He
Point
was
it at
there,
the
though.
person
Okay.
talking.
Oh yeah, I love. He was a trooper.
So I think that's one of the things, like, no matter where we go or how successful we are in this business, I always look back at that moment and really appreciate how hard those people worked. They didn't have to come on there and work 16 hours and give up their weekend. They wanted
Mhm.
to, because they believed in the project. They believed in what we were doing,
That's a long day.
and they want to do it again.
Yeah,
And that's great.
that's fantastic.
Yes.
So what is
yes.
the
We
status of the
we're about
project?
to
You guys
start
are
the
in post
fifth
right now?
version of the rough cut, which is gonna be kind of adding some of the visual effects. Uh, we didn't use real guns, obviously, on set. We used, fake guns, so we have to kind of add the muzzle flashes. And
Mhm.
yeah. Actually, we
Would
were
you use
thinking
like
about
airsoft
renting.
guns or something like that?
They're called, I forget what they're called. It was from a company in New York, but they have uh, it's a special proprietary design that they have. It's called a non-gun, and it comes with certain
Okay.
ammunition. It's not real ammunition, but it basically just makes a sound and creates a muzzle
Mhm.
flash. And we had a couple extra dollars
Oh,
that we
very
were like,
cool.
nah, let's if we do this, let's make it authentic. But then I thought, we're shooting in the daytime. We don't have
Mhm.
no one's going to see the muzzle flash. So, and it was just one muzzle flash that we needed. So
Right. Yeah.
we decided that I could figure
Mhm.
out how to just add it in post, and we have to the creature's head
Mhm. Yeah.
explode, like,
That's
not
easy enough.
explodes, but the bullet rips through the back of his head through the front, so I have to do that. um
Oh wow.
yeah, that's the
That's on
goal.
camera.
That's the goal, is that he
So is
yeah
that going to
yeah
be more
so
After Effects type stuff?
It'll be
Okay.
silhouetted at least, so that might make it a little bit easier because I think the big gore shot is against
yeah,
the
it was
sky,
we,
right,
we
Jeff?
shot
Am
it
I
on the
thinking of the right
sunniest day
moment?
possible at noon, so that his back is against the sun, and it kind of uh, it silhouettes him out, so that we don't have to have a whole lot of detail in the gore in that moment, to get the point
Mhm.
across, if that makes sense.
It sounds like a cool
Oh, me
shot. I mean,
too.
I
Yeah.
love shadows and silhouette kind of style stuff. It almost sounds like a western. You're like high noon
Well, Tom,
with
it
the
felt like a
silhouette there.
western
I'm
every
excited to see
minute
Yeah,
on
this.
set,
it's
because it was
weird.
100 degrees every single day. So,
That's hysterical.
And I will say one thing about that gun. We ended up getting, because we had planned for one thing and it didn't. It ended up falling through. So we literally had to go to Walmart, and this was obviously during the pandemic. One of the
Mhm.
other guys, Mounts, our partner Mounts, who was an assistant on this. We went to Walmart. We waited 2 hours to talk to someone and help us unlock the BB gun cabinet. And this
Oh
thing
my
looked like
god.
such a toy. It was such a sad looking piece of
there-
garbage.
Yeah.
So
And they had it locked up.
and they had it locked up. We couldn't even get to the piece of garbage that we didn't want in the first place, but that's what we had to use. So we took electrical tape and literally wrapped the whole gun to make it look like sort of like a
Wow.
jury rigged, a weapon that they might actually
Yeah.
have on this farm. And I thought it ended up
Mhm.
looking pretty good
That's great.
as
I
like
can't wait to see
a
this.
piece together weapon. I don't know about you,
Mhm.
Jeff, but I thought it ended up
the
looking
thing is,
pretty
I don't
legit.
notice the gun, so that means that we did good enough. Like, I don't, the gun doesn't take me out of the
Right.
story. So
Yeah.
um,
One thing they told us in grad school was from some book. They make a lot of references, and I never remember who they're
yeah, I'm
from.
the same way.
From some guy who wrote some book. It might be Rework is the name of the book. I can't remember. If anyone's curious, send me an email. But one of the things was one of the concepts was good is good enough. It's like, as an artist, I struggle with that sometimes, but as an entrepreneur, good is good enough. You just have to get that thing out there. You can't perfect it and like spend hours and hours and hours and hours. You can do that, but there has to be a time where you finally show it to the world. And
Right.
with this gun, like, you guys could have used that as an excuse, like, oh, we need to do a schedule change. We need to push this off, but you just made it happen, and I think that's amazing, and that's what indie filmmaking is about, is
Yeah,
using the
and it's problem
resources
problem
you have
solving.
available to
And
you.
the thing is, we now we have released a second trailer just a couple days ago, and nobody that's seen it has said, "Great trailer, guys. The gun is really bothering me." So
Yeah. That's great.
yeah.
That's the goal. Well, cool, guys.
So
What's next for you?
as far as the film goes, or just in general,
In general, the film, life.
sure.
Oh, I did want to ask one question too before that. I like delving into real life situations. You guys said you have 9 to 5s as well. You're not doing filmmaking full time just yet?
I'm still a full time
Not
student. I
yet.
graduate in September. But I've been freelancing, just
Okay.
editing some wedding videos and doing some freelance work. Greg has a 9 to 5.
Mhm.
Everybody else that works with us has some sort of 9 to 5 and work. Yeah.
Mhm. Yeah. I mean, I like that's just so interesting to me too, because you have like Greg, I'm gonna ask what you do in a second, but like you have an accountant during the day, and then he just does
Right.
film at night or something like that. It's just I love it's real world. It's just you're bringing your
And
experience
the
into it, and I think
podcast that
that's
we do
great.
makes a couple bucks now, so not nearly enough to survive on, but it's like, oh
That's
my
awesome.
god, we're right there. If we
Sure.
can just
Yeah. Do you guys have like sponsors
Well,
for it, or is it on Patreon?
interesting.
How's it
We
set up?
just got our first real sponsor, paid sponsor, that from Manscaped.
Hell yeah.
So
No way.
yeah,
The
yeah,
like
yeah,
the trimmer?
Yeah.
That's
yeah. So
awesome.
they did a
Oh,
trial with
congrats.
us.
I love that. I mean, not the product. I mean, sure, it's good. I've never used it, but I
Well,
love
even
that
if
you
we
guys
don't
got
make
a sponsor. That's sick.
another dime off of it, we got a whole bunch of free shit, which is amazing. Like, and it's all really good.
Really?
It smells great. It works. It's awesome. So our
Yeah.
host
Oh, that's
is through
awesome.
Spreaker. I don't know who you use to host your podcast, but yeah.
Oh, I've heard
Okay.
that. Yeah,
Well,
we use
Spreaker has
Castos.
a profit sharing thing for their podcast, so you can
Oh,
opt
very
into
cool.
it, and you pick the spot, but they place the ads that they go out and source, and it's 60%.
Wow.
60% goes to the show, 40% goes to Spreaker, which is a really fair split. The
Yeah, that's
fair
not bad.
the most that I've seen out there. We were on other ones before, but we landed in Spreaker. We're really happy with them, and it doesn't amount to much. Like, you have to have billions of listens to make any sort of real money, but it amounts to a
Sure.
couple $100 a month there, plus the Manscaped stuff, plus we have some
That's
merch that
awesome.
sells once in a while. So we're all just trying to piece it together in
Yeah.
that sense.
Very cool.
That's
Castos, if
one
you're
thing I want.
listening, just Castos, our publisher or whatever you call it. You need to get something like that, or I'm switching. Just Spreaker.
It's
If
why
you don't,
it's
if
why
you're
we
listening.
switched out of the other one, because
Pay
I
us.
saw other
Yeah.
Anchor was one that we looked into, but
Okay.
their program wasn't as diversified or big as
Mhm.
Spreaker was. So Spreaker was the biggest one we found. So
Gotcha. And Greg, I rudely cut you off to make my joke about Castos. What were you gonna
No,
say?
I liked your joke, Tom. I appreciated it. You can cut me off anytime for a joke as good as that. This 9 to 5 idea, I'll tell you this. Let's face it. Human beings are not wired to work in a corporate setting, pushing a button like some kind of trained ape. It's not what we're meant to do. Our brains want to go much further than that, at least most people.
Mhm.
And I think that one piece of advice that I would give everybody, ever since I've been in my early 20s, I've been trying to do something other than what I had to do to survive. A lot of people figure, well, I got to do this to survive, so I can't do the thing I want to do
Mhm.
because I got kids, or I've got a mortgage to pay, or I've got I got to eat, whatever the reason is. Uh, and I've always said, even if you have to do your pipe dream in the middle of the night, in whatever spare time you can carve out of your day, that will keep your soul alive. I know
Yep.
that sounds kind of hippy dippy, but like,
It's
it
100%
really
true.
is true. If you can have a passion, if you can do something that keeps the pilot light of your passion lit, you will be able to go ahead and do your menial task, make the money you got to make to take care of your family, which is an honorable thing to do. But you got to keep your soul and your mind alive by engaging in your passion somewhat. And Jeff's one of the only guys that I've ever met who was able to constantly have that part of their reality, and make sure that life was enriched by the pursuit. And as partners, like he was mentioning, brain power on my end, I would say on his end that the biggest asset I get from him as a partner is that Jeff's very aggressive and he's got great instincts. And like I said earlier, he mobilizes people. Us two together, I'm more careful, more paranoid maybe, but I also am a long term. I look at long term, like where we're going and what the potential pitfalls are. So there's a lot of things about us that make us sort of like Jeff and I together would have made one really impressive guy, but we have to be two guys to do it.
Two guys in a trench coat.
But that's But yeah, the main thing I wanted to say was just I would advise anybody out there, engage in your passions in whatever small sliver of your life you're able to carve out, but don't give up on them. Engage in them on some level, and at least your soul will breathe a little bit, and be able to smile once in a while.
I 100% agree. I mean, I was working on my lunch break, working on the film fund, which I am very passionate about. Writing screenplays on the weekend. You got to do it. You got to keep it alive. And I love that comparison you made to a pilot light. That's so great because it's like it's such a small light, but it's so important. You need that pilot light to survive.
And when you lose that,
for sure.
Greg said people aren't wired to sit at a office job and press a button like Homer Simpson. Look, some people are, and that's fine. Like there's nothing wrong with living that life if you're happy. But when I was selling timeshare and working at a bank, that pilot light went out. I was miserable.
Yeah.
And even though I wanted to be creative, I had no desire to work on anything other than just forgetting that my 9 to 5 existed when I was off. You know what I mean? And that's a terrible feeling. Looking back on that, I never want to experience that again. And that was, unfortunately, most of my adult life I spent, not doing something that I was passionate about. And that's a shame. Don't fall into that trap.
But you're doing it now.
But for those of you that are still young, don't fall into that trap. Go pursue what means something to you.
Yeah, even if it's just small. I mean, I know it's so tough. You're burned out from working however many hours you're working to put food on the table. But like, even if it's treating yourself to like a movie or something, like I've gone to the fucking movies myself. Like, just do it. Like, you need to. Yeah.
Hell yeah.
Like I used to have. I mean, rest in peace. But Movie Pass. I took advantage of that thing, man. Oh my god, I went to so many movies.
It died so quickly, didn't it?
I know it really did. They were banking on the data.
Yeah. It was a good idea.
Yeah, I think they thought more people were going to find value in the actionable data. Like, oh, people aren't just liking this video on YouTube; they're actually paying money to go see it. But I guess it did. People didn't really care as much in that end of things. Greg, what's your 9 to 5?
I actually work for a transportation company as a logistics operations supervisor, which means as little as it sounds like it means.
Okay.
A cog in a wheel. But I appreciate it. I've gotten 22 years of steady employment. I won't mention the name just because of they're a little sensitive about social media mentions. But it's a local company. A lot of people are employed in this area by this company. And all I can say is, I appreciate the 22 years of employment, but I'm ready to dip any day now. And I've said to Jeff, like, I don't need to get rich doing this. My immediate goal is just to make enough that I can trade the one salary for the other and do this full time. Because at that point, I don't care if I never make above low 6 figures to support myself. I will be happy. I will be as happy as I could possibly be just doing what I want to do full time and being able to give all my energy to that. So that's what I hope, in spite of feeling lucky that I was able to be employed for 22 years by an established company, and I get my health taken care of, my family's taken care of, I got life insurance, the whole deal. But 22 years is enough. I feel like
you've been at the same company for 22 years.
I could do maybe 5 more.
Oh wow.
Yeah, same company. Like I said, ever since that was the one thing I didn't screw up as a kid, was losing that job, because it did support me and I was able to live. But like I said, in the next 5 years, I feel like for the continued health of the soul,
you got to tap into that philosophy degree a little more.
I do. Of course, one of the most lucrative options you could take. Like, what do you want to go to school for to make a lot of money? Yeah, let's get a philosophy degree. Real smart there.
Every time like a job pops up that I'm like, oh, Sterner would be good at that. He's like, yeah, I would be good at it, but unfortunately, it only pays nickels. And I'm like, oh, well, there you go.
Or Greg, or are any of your skills you think transferable? You said it was. I think you mentioned the word operations in there and logistics. I mean, that has to be transferable to producing, right?
Oh, yeah, for sure. In fact, actually, the I guess you would call it a cargo van, Jeff. That it was sort of a
Hmm.
high top cargo van. I actually got a sweetheart
Oh,
deal
no
from the
way!
company that I work for, renting this for
Hell yeah,
for
I
the
love
girl in the
that.
farm production. So
Yeah.
that was
I
really
definitely
transferable.
see like a traditional producer role for Greg on future projects, securing that type of thing, going out and finding funding and stuff like that. It's the problem is it is like you're at your 9 to 5, which is the hours when you would contact those people that could benefit a project like that. So it's a catch
Hmm.
22. But Greg definitely has those skills to do that. He has the ability to communicate easily with people and
Hmm.
bring them in and explain what the vision is. Whereas me, it's like I could go to them and be like, look, we want to make a film. We want you to be a part of it, but you're not going to make any money on this.
Right.
It's gonna, if anything, it'll lose money, but your name will be, you'll get an IMDb credit,
Yeah.
which doesn't sound very exciting to people that don't think like us. So I think,
Exactly.
I definitely see that. And you asked earlier what's in the future.
Hmm.
I think as far as just the film goes, short term, we're hoping to have it done by the time the Westchester Film Festival runs this spring and
Westchester,
debut
like
it there.
Westchester, PA.
Yeah, yeah, we
Oh,
would love to
awesome!
be able to
I can
debut
actually
it
go to
locally.
that one.
Yeah, yeah, we would love
Oh,
to be able to
sweet.
debut it there locally if we can get it done. We still have a lot of work. We still have to do the sound design for it, which is going to take forever. But
Hmm.
something I enjoy doing, so I can picture myself putting a good 8 hours a day into that to get it done once we
Awesome.
get there. And we have a couple ideas in the pipeline that have actually. You talk about that external validation. One of the contacts I met at Full Sail was a woman who's working for the MCU now. She was just working on the Black Panther movie. She has
Very cool.
a reality TV background, a little one. She worked on the Kardashians and at TLC, and I had this reality TV idea, which neither of Greg and I were like excited about ever like working in reality TV, but
Hmm.
I pitched the idea to her, and she's like, "That's a really good idea. You need to make that. Here's how you go about doing it."
That's
So we
awesome.
kind of got that process started, and we started reaching out to some talent,
Hmm.
and we didn't get really uh, a good response from the people that we reached out to, as far as
Hmm.
not being interested. But I think what we'll do is we'll make a sizzle reel and try and throw that out to some streaming companies.
Okay.
And we have like a TV show idea out there, a couple of
Hmm.
short films,
And you would do all these
and
projects through Whitehorse?
that's what we would like to do. Yeah.
Okay.
If not, we would
Right.
certainly be open to, if we come up with a script or an idea that someone's willing to buy. If we're not really, really, really attached to it, I'm sure
Hmm.
we I'm, would definitely consider selling an idea if
Awesome.
need be. But the but
We
the
will sell
but the
for
thing that
money.
I'm most excited about going forward is actually inspired by something like the Film Fund, where um, the whole Girl on the Farm film we imagine, because I don't know about you, but with the MCU, with the DCEU, with Star Wars doing it, these gigantic worlds that exist are essentially the future of big blockbuster movies, right?
Yeah.
You can't have just one film. It's got to be a series of films that exist in an entire universe in order for it to make mega billions of dollars,
Sure.
which seems to be the goal. But I thought it would be interesting if we expand the universe that Girl on the Farm takes place in, and allow people, other independent filmmakers or students, to create films that take place in the universe where lyssavirus, which is the scientific term for rabies, has gone airborne. It doesn't matter when the film takes place or what type of film it is, if it's a romantic comedy or a horror film or or regular
Hmm.
comedy, as long as it has some element uh, that takes place in this universe where airborne rabies exists.
Hmm.
I think that would be a really challenging thing, but still allow filmmakers to be super creative as they want to.
And it creates a community.
Uh,
You have that common thread. That's great.
Do
yeah,
I
contest
love that.
around
and
it
build a
and stuff.
contest around it, and eventually turn that
Yeah.
into some sort of, whether it's through Patreon or like a small streaming service, give people a chance to not only make their content, but have it seen by people
Hmm.
and stream it somewhere, and maybe be able to come up with some sort of revenue sharing
Hmm.
uh, where you can put a couple bucks in the pockets of independent
Right.
filmmakers.
I love that.
The idea of an open source sandbox
Yes.
that everybody can play in, it just really, really appeals to me and Jeff. Creating a world that is open to others, other filmmakers, and creating all sorts of things around that is really, really exciting. And excuse me, we even have a feature length script that we're through the first draft of, which is sort of like
Mhm.
the goal at the end of this current road. That we're probably not going to
Okay.
be ready to execute on for another 2-3 years, but we have that as sort of like a cloud, a good cloud, not a dark cloud, sort of a bright sort of
Mhm.
vision on the horizon of what we're headed towards, and that will also
Hey,
be
we'll
part of
keep in
this
touch because the Film Fund
universe.
has plans to. I've been saying this for a while, but we do have plans to expand to feature film funding. I have a
Oh,
pretty unique concept of how to go about it. Right now, we're
Excellent.
focused on FF branded and getting that off the ground with branded projects. But keep that script in your back pocket because we are very interested in creating feature films through the Film Fund for sure.
well, we would love to be a part
Hell
of that.
yeah.
And just so you know, a lot of the projects we've mentioned, we plan on submitting to the Film Fund
Awesome.
down the road. We want to get this one done first and focus on this one, but some of those ideas are definitely future pitches to you
Very
guys.
cool. I mean, hey, everything
You haven't seen The
is
Last of
can
Us,
be
Tom.
judged completely anonymously, and I'll check the rules, but there's nothing that says you can't have a repeat winner, which we have had. I think Bo Pashok, we haven't had him on the podcast yet, but he won twice. I think Kid Split gift cards both times, interestingly enough. But yeah, submit away, um, and stay in touch with the community. We have our Discord server. People would love to hear from you guys and your experiences. We have a lot of people sharing stills from films they're working on, asking for advice. Yeah, definitely want to keep growing that community as well.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, I definitely would like to be more involved there.
And
For
Greg, you
sure.
have the same. Obviously, you guys are working together. Your same future plans, getting those projects off the ground.
Yeah, I've got a couple of in my mind. I think I got this from Stephen King, but like he would say you could write with the door closed or you can write with the door open. When you're writing with the door open, it means you're willing to give it to other people to show them and get feedback. I have a couple of closed door ideas still, big concept
Mm-hmm.
ideas that I see probably 10 years down the road. That's the one thing about Whitehorse. It's a collaborative, supportive vision or a collaborative, creative vision. That's sort of our mantra as a company. And our biggest goals, Jeff and my own biggest goals, are almost too big to
Mm-hmm.
convincingly even talk about at this level of the game because it would sound like we're delusional, but we still believe in those ideas. And if the proper things happen along the way and we get more breaks like we got with you guys with the film fund, I have full and complete confidence that we can make those dreams
I
a
love it.
reality. So I've got 10 years down the road dreams. And I've also got 1 year down the road dreams, and Girl on the Farm, and the next steps with the podcast. Those are sort of like the 1 year dreams. And Jeff and I are completely aligned. But yeah, we've got big vision, big ideas, big hopes, and luckily a natural supply of
Hell
lots of
yeah, I love
fantasy
that. Keep
in
that pilot
ourselves
leg
to keep
going.
us
Guys, I want to
driven.
thank you both for coming on the podcast today. We
Hell
are
yeah.
over an hour, so I got to figure out how to get this thing onto Instagram if they still have that hour limit, but we'll figure it out. I want to thank thank all the listeners for tuning
Just
in.
cut out
Yeah,
Greg's part.
he's he's got the paranormal activity video going. We could just have it come in and out. We'll figure something out there. Just want to remind you that winter narrative and documentary contests just closed today. Depending on when you're listening to this, though, they may be open because we run them frequently. So check our website, social media channels, sign up for the email newsletter to get the most up to date information. I want to thank our sponsor, Expressway Cinema Rentals, for sponsoring the package that Greg and Jeff won to make A Girl on the Farm. And the blog is great.
Thank
We
you.
have that new learn section. Check that out, thefilmfund.co/learn, educational tips and resources. And as well as our new blog at blog.thefilmfund.co, where we'll have updates just on projects that are happening with the Film Fund, things in the film industry like crypto and the metaverse or buzzwordy things that we like to write about because I'm a big nerd. We also have an ebook page on our resources page. Check that out. And want to thank everyone again. I used to plug the merch. I kind of settled down with that. We might be bringing it back though. Still on our website. If you go to thefilmfund.co/merchandise, you can get a cool hat like I'm wearing. And we might be releasing some new products soon there too. So check that out. And these episodes, we've been publishing them every other Friday. So we're going to stick to that. So thank you so much, everybody. Greg, Jeff, have anything else you want to add?
Thanks for having us on.
Awesome. Thank
No,
you.
just thanks so much. Thanks so
Thanks
much,
for
Tom.
giving
We really
artists
appreciate it.
a chance to
You got it.
do what they love
And
to do.
I will talk to everyone soon. Have a great one.